To everyone watching us on Facebook and participating here on Zoom, the Veterinary Circle for 10 with the Northern Exotics and Wildlife Troopers and the Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines all work together to conduct an educational program called Advocacies on Conservation and Awareness Project for Wildlife, or ACAP Wildlife. Headed by Circular Daisy Acuna, one of its component activities is the Uncovered webinar series.
To everyone, this activity aims to raise awareness about the status of Philippine wildlife and to promote under conservation. The webinar series will run from October 2 to October 17, 2020 via Zoom and streamed on Facebook.
Just a few housekeeping notes before we formally start the program, if you don't mind. We encourage everyone here on Zoom to keep their microphone and camera off during the whole presentation. If you wish to ask questions, you may enter them on the chat box. If you're using a mobile device, just tap on the three dotted icon on the bottommost right corner of your screen and tap again on the first tab that says chat. And if you're using a computer, you will find chat on the meeting controls bar at the bottom of your screen. You may click on that.
The question and answer portion will be after each presentation. Circular Dar and I will bring up and pick at least 3 questions and have them answered by our presenter. If we specifically did not tend to your questions, don't you worry, we will have our resource speaker answer them for you separately. And then we will forward them via email after this webinar episode.
We are also on Facebook Live. However, we do suggest that you fill out a Google form and register through the link that you will find pinned at the comment section. Again, we just want to make it clear that only the Zoom participants will get the chance to have their questions entertained. Also, VC10 will only award certificates for those who registered to this webinar.
May I remind everyone to listen attentively during the lectures because there will be bonus questions to come from them, which we will be posting on our official Facebook page straight after this episode. Everyone who participates to answer the bonus questions will get a chance to win an animal plush toy in courtesy of the Philippine Eagle Foundation.
All right, we are now asking everyone to please remain silent as we all feel the presence of our Almighty God and to the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
That I am and all that I have, I lay them down before you, oh Lord, and all my regrets and all my acclaim, the joy and the pain, I'm making them yours.
Things in the past, things yet unseen, wishes and dreams that are yet to come true. All of my hopes, all of my plans, my heart and my hands are lifted to you.
Everything I
bayan ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, tegas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa dagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo pagaw, ay hinatang tulakawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhaging pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Veterinary Circle for 10, I welcome all viewers and audience via Zoom and Facebook Live to the second episode of our webinar series, Uncovered, of the ACAP Wildlife Program. I would like to welcome Dr. Aineline Barrion Dupo from the Institute of Biological Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Mr. Inigo Luis Del Prado from Herpwatch Pilipinas, and Dr. Arvin Diezmos from the National Museum of the Philippines. To all our viewers and audience from the different universities in the Philippines, and to all wildlife enthusiasts, especially spiders and snakes aficionado, together with our guest speakers for today, let's all discover and understand the interesting world of the misunderstood creatures. Maraming salamat and enjoy.
Thank you, Circular Ashley, for those thoughtful remarks.
Let me introduce you to our first presenter for today's episode. She is currently a Professor 10 and Deputy Director at the Institute of Biological Sciences, College of Arts and Sciences, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. A curator in the entomology section at the UPLB Museum of Natural History. In 2015, she was recognized and awarded by the National Academy of Science and Technology as one of the country's outstanding young scientists. In 2017, she was among the awardees of Thesis of a Teacher by Bato Balani Foundation Incorporated and Biwa Learning Incorporated. She was also awarded as one of the outstanding ASEAN Science Diplomats in June 2020.
She is the daughter of the renowned Filipino scientist Dr. Alberto and Dr. Adelina Barrion, who was referred to as Spider Woman. She, together with her father, had a lot of contribution in taxonomy of rice black bags, spiders, and moths. Recently, they have named 3 new endemic species of jumping spiders found in Calabarzon. She will be talking about the Philippines' most exploited spider species. May we just remind again everyone not to hesitate to ask questions. You may type in your queries even while the presentation is ongoing, and we are going to have them answered after the lecture. We are inviting you now to take the floor, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present the Philippines' most exploited spider species. But before I start enumerating which spider species are traded or are used as pets, let me share with you some bits of information about spiders in general. So we start off with forming a web or pagbubuo ng sapot. So more often than not, we simply lump spiders together with insects simply because they have a lot of legs. But just to separate these spiders from insects, if you look at the illustration, spiders have only 2 body regions unlike insects which have 3. So spiders, the head, the thorax, are fused together to form what we term as the cephalothorax. And then you have the abdomen. Insects, on the other hand, you have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Okay, So spiders take on a lot of forms too. In this case, the illustration shows you a spider that looks like or mimics an ant. And this is from the genus Myrmarachne. Myrma meaning ant, arachne refers to the term spider. So ant mimic spider. Sometimes spiders also take on the form of beetles. So they mimic beetles also. And within species, they also exhibit differences. And we term this as sexual dimorphism. So if you look at the illustration here, the top part will show you that the female is much larger than the male of the species. And even members of the species exhibit differences, and we call this polymorphism. So oftentimes, I receive pictures for identification and I have difficulty identifying them because many species of spiders are polymorphic. So I'm very careful when dishing out identification. That is submitted through photos. So now that we know how diverse spiders are, maybe it's high time we know them further. So paano ba ang pagkilala sa kanila? How do we best know them? So sometimes we make use of eyes, gamit ang mata. We look at eye patterns of spider families. Gamit ang sapot, we also look at web building behavior. Gamit ang ugali, what time do they go out at night to catch prey, or what time do they go out in the morning also to catch prey or do their other activities. So nagkakaiba-iba pa yun for spiders. And that is also part of diversity. So spider families can roughly be identified through their eye patterns. So in this case, this would be crab spiders of the family Thomisidae. If you look at the arrangement of eyes, it looks like a boat or a happy face. For Dinopids or net-casting spiders, very distinctive would be the two headlamp eyes because these are active nocturnal spiders. Other active hunters such as celticids or the jumping spiders you often encounter in the field would have an arrangement of eyes like this one. So spitting spiders, meanwhile, look like this. So these are just some examples. But now let's look at some web builders and non-web builders. All spiders produce silk, but not everyone creates webs. We have orb weavers. So these are spiders that create webs in a circular fashion. So in this case, they also have additional structures called stabilimenta. There are theories on the usefulness of stabilimenta, whether they reflect light to hide the spiders or reflect light to attract prey, or as the name implies, they make the webs stable. But these are still hypotheses that still needs testing. So this one lines up all of the carcasses of its prey in its orb web. So this is also an orb weaver of the genus Cyclosa. Some orb weavers make additional structures called tents. So these are tent builders, wherein you would find that the spiders are hiding inside these tent structures. If you cannot find the spiders, let me show you through this arrow. There. So the spider hides inside, maybe also to prevent desiccation if it's too hot during the day. It's cooler inside the tent structure. There are also web builders that do not form orb webs or circular webs. Rather, they make a web of a lace-like pattern. So we term this secrus, or for members of the family Secridae, in terms of the lace that they build. So they're called lace web building spiders. The urinal hunters or daytime hunters would be members of the family Oxyopidae or the wolf spiders. Nighttime, also a diurnal spider or a daytime spider would be this jumping spider of the genus Portia. This particular mustache spider tends to prefer fellow spiders as a meal. Okay, and this, you're very familiar with this one because you find this in your home. This is a huntsman spider, but the nature of its hunting usually happens at night. And even with this member of the family, Stenidae. Tarantulas generally, as we observed in the field, hunt at night or feed at night, although we really have no idea how the spider detects daytime, nighttime inside the cave. But our field observations are telling us that most of the time it prefers to hunt at night. Okay. So scientists have summarized or classified the strategy by which spiders make their webs and also hunt or grasp prey. So they classify this into 4 levels. If it's just grasping, biting, they make no webs such as theraposids and clubionids. In the earlier photo, you would see that there are no webs, but the silk is used as a lining of their domiciles. For those that grasp and bite, they produce ground webs. It's for the family Agelenids. For aerial webs, so those are the usual types of webs that you find. They do occasional wrapping, such as those of the Linyphiids. Those that are variable in nature, grasp, bite, wrap, or wrap and bite, or wrapping only, they also make aerial webs. And these families are the Pterideids, Araneids, and Euloborids. So when we produce new information or ang pagbabahagi o paghahabi ng ibang impormasyon or bagong impormasyon depends on our appreciation of the species. So as the conservationist Baba Dayum used to say, in the end, we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. So I started my talk with a bit of sharing with you an understanding of spiders. So this list is just an initial list of spiders that are existing in the Philippines and are traded throughout the country. Many of which in this list are tarantulans because they are used as pets. So if you notice, their distribution is mostly for South America, but there are also Philippine endemics. There's also an Indian endemic here, the Guti tarantula, and the Sri Lankan endemic, the French ornamental. Those that are existing in the country and are found nowhere else in the world, meaning they are endemic, would be the Philippine dwarf tarantula, the Polillo cave tarantula, and the Philippine orange tarantula. But we have several new species of spider waiting to be discovered, and among these are the theraposids. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. For those that are used for spider fights, this is the initial list. It's normally I added the local name. So they're mainly from the genus Poltis, Certophora, Erevixia, and Neoscona. The most popular would be from the genus Neoscona. So the common names depend on where they collect it, how good they are in fighting. So the list is still very much new or initial. So this one is Erevixia. We use also this one for spider fighting. This one is Neoscona aldinae. So the most distinguishing feature would be the spearhead on top of this abdomen. Current distribution records would be Luzon and Mindanao only because these are the reports that we are receiving. But I know there are members of this species in the Visayas region. So you can find them in grasslands, agricultural ecosystems, as well as in forest ecosystems. This is Neoscona facundoy or gagambang uno. So as the name implies, the distinct number 1 marks its abdomen. So you can also find this in Luzon, in grassland system, agroecosystems, and forest ecosystems. This one is Neoscona lipana. So there's a distinct large spot on its abdomen. This one is Neoscona punctigera, the most commonly used species for spider wrestling or spider fighting. It comes in different morphs. So as mentioned earlier, several spiders come in polymorphs. So these are examples of polymorphic spiders. So even if this one has a large spot, if you look at the genitalia, it still falls under Neoscona punctigera. So it's very hard to simply make a reliable identification just basing it on photos. So why are spiders exploited? So let's look at the issue. Let's start with what makes spiders exploitable. Many people believe that since spiders produce so many young, they are bound to be unlimited in supply. But we also need to remember that while this is so, this number is also for predator spiders. So predator spiders are
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. For now, we'd love to thank the following sponsors for making this activity possible: Pet Lovers Animal Clinic and Emergency Services, Doc May Pet Wellness Center, and to the following VC10 alumni: Circular Julius Ladia, Circular Dr. Adelfa Ann Marquez, Circular Dr. Maya Liana Abawa, Circular Dr. Marvin Brian Salinas, Circular Dr. Brian Irvin Lopez, Circular Dr. Audrey Siblas, Circular Dr. Jeffrey Cruz, Circular Dr. Gerardo Aranjuez, Circular Dr. K. Ann Bautista, Circular Dr. Kevin Dave Shaw, Circular Dr. Charmaine Ilano, Circular Dr. Justin Hozon, Circular Dr. Joy Niverio, Circular Dr. Alvin John Oliveros, Circular Maria Gloria Carriaga, Circular Raven Agustin, Circular Edwin Calixto, Circular Raquel Hervasio, Circular Christopher Rivera, Circular Joseph Valenzuela, Circular Diane Camille, and Circular Dr. May Rulives of the Javier family in loving memory of Circular Dr. Danilo D. Javier. Your generosity will not go unappreciated.
So there, hello everyone. Our apologies, we are experiencing a technical difficulty. Please stay while we are fixing it. Thank you so much. And also, the Philippine Eagle Foundation is also running a campaign since the pandemic brought about by COVID-19. It has become even more challenging to sustain their rescue's needs. You may help them look after Philippine eagles and other wildlife animals under their care by donating through BDO and BPI bank accounts. We also accept donations through PayPal and GCash.
We are very proud to tell everyone that the Veterinary Circle for 10 has also been shortlisted for the World's Rabies Day Awards for Global Student Group to represent not only Central Luzon State University, but the whole Philippines. Voting closes on the 18th of October. We'd love for you to support our cause if that would be possible and if you don't find it inconvenient. And vote for us through the link we will be sharing on a separate post on our Facebook page.
Hello, everyone. We are very proud to tell that the Veterinary Circle for 10 has been shortlisted for World's Rabies Day. Rare. We are very proud to tell that the Veterinary Circle for 10 has been shortlisted for the World Rabies Day Awards for a global student group to represent not only CLSU but the whole nation. Voting closes on the 18th of October. We'd love for you to support our cause and vote us through the link we will be sharing on a separate post on our Facebook page. And for updates, do not forget to follow us on our official Facebook page at Veterinary Circle for 10 and our partner organizations for this activity at Newt NEB and Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines.
We are also on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. If you haven't followed us yet, you may follow us at the same name, Veterinary Circle for 10. On Twitter, do follow us at VT10, CLSU_VT10.
Okay, again, our partner organization, the Northern Exotics and Wildlife Troopers, Nueva Ecija branch, is in need of financial support. Donations would proceed to support the rescued animals, and any amount would be greatly appreciated. You may donate through Newt NEB's President Vincent Reginald Thomas video bank account or through GCash to 0917 4560572.
Our thought. So I So our mission statement again goes back to the conservationist Baba Dayum. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. we will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. So I hope this very brief talk has instilled in you a good understanding of spiders that will contribute to their conservation. So again, maraming salamat po for listening this afternoon.
Hello to our viewers and audience here on Zoom on Facebook. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. We will raise them during our Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Amy, for that very informative lecture. Ma'am, I remember reading your name po on the news. You do field work with your father, Dr. Barrion. Tama po ba? I remember reading the article when you discovered 3 new species of jumping spiders around Laguna, if I'm not mistaken po.
Yes, tama po yun.
Opo. Ma'am, not really fond of spiders, pero spider behavior seems very interesting po. Like, some make webs, sabi nyo nga po, but not all. Meron ding spitting spiders. Ayun nga po, jumping spiders.
Mm-hmm.
And then yung huntsman, di ba?
Yes.
Na, yun, very common po yun dito sa bahay, ganun, or sa mga tree bark.
Oo, I think you're mostly familiar with the huntsman spider. Yung nakikita nyo sa mga banyo, sa comfort room nyo. Oo, yung hindi kayo nakakaligo hanggat di siya nakakalabas. Oo.
And then, ma'am, nung bata po ako, I distinctly remember na uso pa po yung spider wrestling. Nabanggit po.
Yes,
Nung
kahit
kinip po nila sa
ngayon.
matchboxes. Diba?
Oo. Actually, sophisticated na nga yung mga spider wrestlers ngayon. Meron na silang mga binibigay na mga formula para mas lumakas daw sila. Even the matchboxes ngayon, parang mga condominium units na sila. May special containers na rin.
Yes. I think everyone can agree with this po na we have this common childhood memories, especially for those who grew up in rural areas. We used to play a traditional Filipino game, spider fights.
Oo. Nung sinearch natin siya, nalaman natin na hindi lang pala sa Philippine culture ang playing with spiders. Japan also has the spider fighting practices, but theirs is more sustainable because they simply practice it at a particular season, but it's not the fight to the death, unlike here in the Philippines na talagang papatayin natin sila after. So, mas sustainable yung practice nila sa Japan. It's the mere cutting of the web wherein a winner is declared. Here in the Philippines, it's the death of the opposing spider that you are declared the winner.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you again for sharing your knowledge with us today. And we're now picking 3 questions from our viewers. The first question is from Lyle. I just want to ask if there is any current spider species here in the Philippines that can be considered invasive.
At the moment, none. Although the presentation was cut a bit early, you weren't able to view all the list of spiders. But if you notice, there are spiders that are being introduced in the country that come from South America, from India, from Sri Lanka. So we are trying to monitor this in the field na hindi sila makapasok to prevent this to become future invasives.
Okay. The second question po, ma'am, comes
Yes.
from our viewer from CLSU. Ang tanong po niya, are there species of spiders that reside in flora?
I'm sorry?
Are there species of spiders that reside in flora? Po, ma'am.
I don't understand the question. Medyo mahina, dear.
Are there species of spiders that reside in flora? Po?
That reside in plants, I mean. Tama ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Several spider, they don't really reside inside flowers, but you can often find, for example, crab spiders near flowers or at the middle of blooms. They simply hide in the middle, waiting for the opportune time for bees, flies, and other pollinators or floral visitors to visit flowers. But at the end of the day, they still have their own homes. Nagtatago sila sa ilalim ng mga dahon, not much on the flower.
Okay. Our next question is from a student also. Are there any species of venomous spiders in the Philippines? And do they live in urban or rural areas?
Whether you're living in urban or rural areas, a lot of the, if not all, spiders in the Philippines are venomous to some extent. But their toxicity to humans is not that large. Kumbaga, when you're bitten by a spider here, it's unlikely that you'll die of the bite. Normally, the death is due to secondary infection or through an allergic reaction to the venom. Just like bee sting also.
All right. Ma'am, here's another one po. Mukhang very interested po talaga yung mga viewers natin sa spiders. What can you say po about the crossbreeding of spiders in order to get desired morphs for wildlife trade?
I'm not really in favor of that kasi when we look at biodiversity, we look at it at 3 levels. One would be at the ecosystem level, species level, and at the genetic level. The moment you start breeding spiders for just for bringing out traits, you're already damaging the diversity of their genetics. You don't really know what you're up against after that. It's either you're diluting particular characters, it's not really much of an enhancement. So I try not to dwell on things that are unnatural.
Thank you, ma'am. This is from another student. Tinatanong niya po, what are the reasons for exploitation?
Kanina we present the how, what, why. Why are spiders exploited? Simply because we, the public, often believe that because they produce a lot of eggs, there's an unleashed supply of spiders. Kinukuha natin sila simply because we think that there'll still be a lot of spiders around, not knowing that their contributions to the environment, while indirect, is still significant. It's just that when we don't really get to appreciate the value of something, we don't really care if they're missing in the picture. We don't really notice that our dengue population, our dengue cases are going up simply because the mosquito population is not being controlled by predators like spiders. We hate so many houseflies, for example, but we do not care if the predators that bring down their numbers are non-existent. So it's mostly how we value spiders in our society because they do not have direct impact in our lives. Mas madalas we're more afraid of them than value their use. They're easily exploited kasi who would miss one spider? Laging ganun eh. Isa lang naman yung namatay. But count how many people think that way, that's already significant.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And we have another question from a student. Do we have a field guide on Philippine spiders?
At the moment, none. Some of the pages you have seen in the presentation is actually part of the upcoming book. We're starting with Aura of Weavers because if we're going to do the whole number of spiders in the country, I think we will not get around to finishing it. So we're doing it by family. Hopefully within this year, we're going to release it. We're still gathering funds for support for that.
Okay po. Thank you, ma'am. This comes from a viewer from UPLB naman po. Actually, baka you might know this person po. Does the contribution of Philippine arachnids follow the zoogeography of the archipelago?
maybe not. Like insects, spiders have a different mode of distribution, but we're still using the zoogeography guide in looking at distribution records, how they are distributed. We're assuming that they follow plants also, that they follow the prey also, but there's still extremes that we cannot really explain why they're there. And especially now that trade is very rampant, it's wreaking havoc on distribution records.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have another question from our audience, Carlo Timothy. What are your take on the habeas of tarantulas? Should we legalize keeping them?
Since we cannot stop hobbyists from doing what they want, and I know that we have a lot of responsible pet owners and pet keepers, we have to be able to bring that responsibility into a monitoring scheme. We have to be able to record where they are so we can monitor movements and how they are being taken care of. We have to take active participation also, not to uh, not to judge people who take care of spiders kasi their interest actually contributes also to science. They make good observations, and I have known responsible hobbies providing us with essential information, scientific information. But again, we have a law, may batas tayo, so we have to be able to comply. And if we are truly responsible pet owners, we would have our pets registered and monitored, just like our dogs and cats.
Yes. To our viewers and audience, please take note of that.
Ma'am, meron po tayong next question. Actually, more likely a concern po ito. On one slide, sabi po ng ating viewer, I read the list of tarantulas not endemic in the Philippines. Recognized po ba ito ng DENR?
I think the data, I'm not really sure if the DNR already has our data, but they have been collecting or they do have collections of spiders from raids. So I'm assuming they already know that this is not from the Philippines. We are trying to our best to borrow these spiders that they have gathered from raids so that we could identify them and put them on record.
Thank you po. Ma'am, nag-occur po kasi ang technical difficulty natin nung nag-discuss po kayo about why spiders are being exploited.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on that na lang po, ma'am?
Yun nga, why spiders are being exploited is because they look like disposable animals kasi marami sila. They give birth to a lot of young. For example, if one egg case can yield around 350 spiderlings, who would miss missing 2? But remember that those numbers are actually prey for larger organisms such as birds, lizards. So that means the numbers are for predators. And humans are not normal predators of spiders. And we are reducing the numbers simply because we want them as pets or simply because we want them for our game animals. They're cheaper game animals. So what happens is that we're extracting too much of the population and they cannot follow, they cannot adjust to that extraction. Kasi for spider fights, for instance, all of the spiders collected for spider fights are females. So there are the reproductive parts of the population. So just imagine the effect on that in the population.
Ma'am, our apologies again for the technical issues a while ago. Ma'am, can we just upload for downloading sa public yung presentation niyo po a while ago?
The video?
Yeah, yes, ma'am, your presentation.
Okay lang yung video.
Thank you so much, ma'am, because for sure our audience and viewers are looking forward for the information na na-skip po a while ago.
Okay.
And your presentation was very elaborate po kasi, ma'am. Ang informative talaga.
So, yes. Once again, ma'am, thank you for educating us on the distribution and diversity of spider species and which of the spider species are usually at risk or may be threatened. We also encourage our audience here in Zoom and on Facebook to take part in disseminating vital information about spiders and the awareness campaign.
Yes po.
Thank you.
We appreciate those questions coming in kasi ang dami po pala talaga. And
Yes.
for those whose questions, though, that have not been answered due to time constraints, we'll get back to you after this webinar episode. Have them answered by our resource speaker na lang po. We will directly send the answers to the questions to you via email na lang. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you.
Again, thank you, Dr. Amy Barion Dupo. It's wonderful to have you as a resource speaker for our Uncovered webinar series. All the best, ma'am.
We now move on to the awarding of certificate. For that, may I call on Circular Daisy Acuna, Visiting Secretary General, Internal, and Uncovered Activity Head to read us the certificate citation. Circular Daisy, please do the honor.
This certificate reads as follows. Veterinary Circle for 10, Central Luzon State University. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Dr. Emiline Barion Dupo for being one of the resource speakers in the undervalued wildlife necessitates conservation through volunteerism and education for the restoration of ecological balance and diversity, or Uncovered, Webinar Episode 2 on Herps and Spiders. In her presentation entitled The Webinar, Philippines' Most Exploited Spider Species, held online via Zoom and social media websites on October 3, 2020. Signed, Aaron Nicole D.C. Dacumos, Executive President of Veterinary Circle for 10. Daisy C. Acuna, Coordinator of ACAP Wildlife Program. Vincent Reginald G. Thomas, Master Trooper of Newt NEB. Dr. Froilan Bernard R. Matias, and Dr. Jonathan V. Lazaro, Advisors of Veterinary Circle for 10, Academic Year 2020 to 2021.
Our next resource speaker is a curator in herpetology and museum researcher at the Zoology Division, National Museum of the Philippines. He finished both his Bachelor of Science in Biology and Masters of Science in Wildlife Studies degrees at the University of the Philippines and earned a PhD in Biology from the National University of Singapore.
He is a career scientist of the Philippines with the rank of Scientist 3. He is a co-discoverer of over 80 species of frogs, lizards, snakes, insects, arthropods, and bird species. He is also a recipient of the 2008 Outstanding Young Scientist Award from the National Academy of Science and Technology of the Philippines and the 2015 Achievement Award from the National Research Council of the Philippines.
We now move on to our second topic for today's webinar episode. Our speaker is also a herpetologist studying the phylogeny of Philippine pit vipers. He's been working with Dr. Diezmos under Herpwatch Filipinas for several years now and have joined him in a lot of herpetofaunal surveys where he mainly works with snakes. Ladies and gents, here are Dr. Arvin Diezmos and Mr. Inigo Luis Del Prado to talk about venomous snakes in the Philippines.
To our viewers and audience, please feel free to ask questions. Let me just remind everyone again that you may enter your questions right away so we may raise them during the Q&A. Dr. Diezmos and Mr. Del Prado, you may now have the floor.
Our next resource speaker is a curator.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes po, doctor. We can hear you po.
Okay, you can hear me.
Apo.
Okay, that's good. Clear naman, ano?
Yes
Yes
po.
po.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead. I'll go first. Pero can we also ask Inigo to show yourself? Para lang yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hello po, good afternoon.
Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sige, so we'll be magiging tag team ito, our presentation for today. Maikli lang naman to, siguro mga 2 minutes tapos na tayo. And pero si Inigo mas matagal to. So I'll go first. I'll give you the basics, and then Inigo here will give you more details sa
venomous snake, sir.
yeah, sa venomous snakes. Okay, so let's start na. Can you see my screen na?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Okay. Yung screen ay scales na, tama?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Live ito, hindi to recorded. So hopefully nothing bad will happen sa internet connection. Okay, my designated title for today's presentation is about misconceptions. Ito yung title na binigay sa akin ng ating organizers. However, I'll be, I'm just talking about Philippine snakes in general na. Para this will be like basic, Philippine snakes 101 type of a talk. Pero before we proceed, magpapasalamat muna ako sa inyong lahat. Thank you, Veterinary Circle for 10, for organizing this webinar. You should do more of this. May tanong lang ako, bakit for 10 lang? Bakit hindi 11 or 12? Anyway. And thank you sa Newt, sa Northern Exotic Wildlife Troopers. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Daisy. Si Daisy yung unang mga nagbigay ng invitation sa amin. Thank you. We appreciate your invitation. We hope to see you one of these days. Thanks kay Dr. Aaron Dacumas, yung president. Kay Dr. Froilan Matias, the DBM. And Dr. Jonathan Lazaro, mga advisors. And I wish to thank my institution, the National Museum of the Philippines sa Manila, Biodiversity Management Bureau ng DNR, Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines, Herpwatch Pilipinas, and our herpers from the University of Santo Tomas. Sorry guys, walang shout out ngayon kasi baka wala lang. Okay, so I'm a field biologist. I specialize in herpetology. Herpetology is a branch of biology that deals with the study of amphibians and reptiles. Katulad ng ating previous speaker, si Professor Dupo, si Amy, I'm also a product of UPLB. Karamihan kasi ng mga wildlife biology studies, insects, animals, vertebrates sa UPLB yung marami nag-specialize. So I'm proud to be able to have been a product of UP Las Bañas. And sa aking, like the information you'll be seeing, ito ay a culmination of many decades of research work and collaboration, and of course inspiration. And I like to thank these 4 people who have been very instrumental in my growth as an herpetologist, especially si national scientist Angel Alcala. And of course, my better half also played a role, si May Diaz. Now, magsimula muna tayo sa basic knowledge, parang Philippine Snakes 101. Pero in this case, let's do reptiles first. Itong grupo na ito, the reptiles are being lumped together. Ito yung mga animals na merong scales in general, apart from fish. So, mga squamates itong mga to. And reptiles in the Philippines actually comprise of 4 groups. Meron tayong crocodiles, right? Meron tayong mga turtles, both freshwater and marine. And meron tayong mga lizards and meron tayong mga snakes. Itong richness na ito, or yung species richness na we'll be presenting to you, this is kind of yung mga current known numbers today. Hindi kasama dito yung mga marine turtles pa. And we have about 360 species of reptiles in general. Ang snakes comprise about 141. All right. Pero I would say one of the best feature of this fauna, yung reptilian fauna in the Philippines, is the high level of endemicity. For example, for crocodiles, we have one of the two. We have one that is found only in the Philippines, or endemic. Yun yung terminology na ginagamit sa biodiversity. It's kind of different with clinical term sa medicine. But essentially it's the same, because endemic species are those only found in a certain area. In this case, Philippines lang na. For turtles, we only have one so far, pero I'm sure this will change as knowledge becomes available and mag-accumulate. For lizards, we have about a high percentage, close to 90, over 80%, and that's very high actually. It's one of the highest in Southeast Asia, or in Asia, for that matter. And for snakes, so far we have about 50% then endemicity, which is also quite high. Pero we believe yung mga herpetologists think that this is still an underestimate, because we are still in age of discovery, and we are still discovering a lot of new species. Katulad ng mga pag-discover nila Prof. Dupo, nila Prof. Amy, marami pa rin tayong nadi-discover ng mga new species ng amphibians, reptiles, snakes. For example, we're just finishing the description of a snake that we discovered. Yung team ng UP Diliman discovered from Zambales Mountain Range. And we think na marami pa rin tayong madi-discover, especially sa inyo, sa lugar niyo dyan sa Nueva Ecija, yung Sierra Madre. Marami pa dyan madi-discover. And the nice thing about this is karamihan ng madi-discover natin would be species that are found only in the Philippines. Mga Pinoy na mga species to, mga endemic species talaga. And of course, a lot of our species, like most groups, are usually found in forested habitats, in forests. Whether limestone karst or your typical forest volcanic soils, or even ultramafic soils. In fact, 80 to 90% of our snakes species are forest species. That's one take-home message for you guys. So very important talaga yung forest habitats sa ating biodiversity ng snakes, or biodiversity in general. Although a lot of our snakes are diurnal, active during the day, for the most part, when we do field work, for example, here we found a mountain rat snake. It's kind of big, no? It's kind of long snake. I think this guy was about 6 or 7 feet long, and about this thick. Medyo mataba siya. It's one of those big snakes that are found in our mountains, no? And they're pretty exciting to catch, especially if you're catching big snakes. But a lot of our snakes also, we estimate siguro mga 30 to 40% of our snakes are nocturnal naman. Meaning they're active during the night. And Inigo here will be talking a lot more about this nocturnal species kasi yung kanyang work is actually working usually at night. And working at night in the field, especially sa, sa mountains, sa mga forested mountains, is really a different world out there. It's yung sensory mo ay mag-iiba eh. Yung how you navigate through the forest at night. It will give you such a rush, ibang klaseng feeling yan. Especially when you're catching animals that you like to catch or studying them. So I'll just give you a basic knowledge about ecology and distribution, especially in terms of habitat and elevation. Okay, ng ating mga snakes, and applicable naman to sa ibang grupo ng amphibians and reptiles, na ibang animals na rin. For example, given typical big mountain like this is Mount Mayon, over 2,000 meters elevation, especially mga bigger mountains. The pattern that we have observed is as you climb up, as you go up higher the mountain, yung richness, this one indicated by that rectangular, by that rectangle na kulay white box, your richness, meaning your number of species, decreases. All right, bumababa. That same pattern is also true for many groups of animals, some birds or some mammals even. For reptiles and amphibians, same pattern naman yan. As you go up, kumukonti yung mga species na nakikita mo. However, yung endemicity, yung mga endemic species, yung proportion nila increases naman, such that when you get up the top of yung peak ng mountain, for example, Mount Banahaw or Mount Mayon, especially big mountains, Mount Apo, Mount Hamigitan, you'll find that a lot of the animals there are endemic na lang. Doon na lang makikita. Okay? Ito yung, like a diagram na kanyang distribution, yung elevational or altitudinal distribution. Malaki yung implication nito sa conservation, like what Professor Lupa has emphasized na, yung knowledge kasi sa ecology, distribution, and of course taxonomy, malaki yung impact nito sa conservation on how to conserve or protect your species. All right, ito yung mga basic knowledge natin that we need in order to protect biodiversity. It's as simple as that. Kasi for example, what if yung mga mountains kasi na to, kaya naman sila may ganong distribution na very distinct kasi iba-iba naman kasi yung types ng habitat ng forest. Okay, keep that in mind, especially kayong mga younger people. Kasi when I was a bit younger also, ang naituro sa amin is yung forest, parang forest lang. Okay, hindi na-emphasize yung iba-iba pala yung types ng forest. For example, yung mga nakikita mo na forest, sa low elevation, these are usually the pericarp forest. Iba yung itsura niya, iba yung structure, iba yung species composition, iba yung microclimate, ganon, compared sa nakikita mo sa higher elevation forest like montane or especially mossy forest. Iba na yung itsura niyan. Okay? So that's take-home message number 2. Itong mga ecological patterns na to is also very important in understanding yung, the ecology of your species. Diba? Very important yun. Kasi for example, what if itong mga species, yung mountain mo, what if na-disturb talaga yan because of kaingin or quarrying or especially mining. Diba? So na-imagine nyo kung gaano nakadami yung ilang proportions ng iyong composition ng fauna. Again, whether spiders yan or snakes or frogs, maraming mawawala na. Kasi una-una, yung mga species na nakikita ninyo sa top of the mountains, sa peak na yung mga yon, hindi mo naman sila pwedeng dalhin sa baba, sa lowland, para doon sila tumira. Simply, they cannot survive there kasi they weren't built for that, di ba? Hindi sila nag-evolve doon. Iba yung kanilang requirements, ecological requirements. Yeah. So, yeah, so keep that in mind. Now, so I will now be focusing on some basic knowledge, about how to recognize snakes, and then mag-shift na tayo dun sa mga misconceptions. Okay. And first and foremost, mga snakes do not have ears. Okay. As you can see here in this photo, in this slide, yung nasa left ninyo ay mga snakes, obviously, no? Wala silang timpana. Mga timpana, wala, di ba? Well, whereas this sa right, mga lizards ito, mga to. Kasi kita mo naman yung butas, di ba? Ears. Most snakes, it doesn't mean that they're deaf. Tama ba? Oh, deaf. Bingi. Pero they can sense, they're quite sensitive. They can sense yung mga vibrations or sounds even through their ventrals or their scales. And other sensory organs nila. Pwedeng sa flicking ng tongue. Isa rin yung way. No? Pero for the most part, they can sense the vibrations, for example, through their body. So they're quite sensitive. So. Number two, snakes don't have eyelids. Unlike yung lizard, yung nasa left, di ba, na nakapikit kasi tulog siya. Ang mga snakes, palaging nakamulat yan. Okay, which is probably a bummer kasi paano ka matutulog, no? So, anyway, problema na nila yon. So, pero I'm sure nakakatulog naman sila. Okay? And actually they can do that. Shut down. Honestly, how they do it, I don't know. No? Pero just read about it. Okay. Since karamihan naman kayo ay mga vet med, you're kind of smart people. And also, it's easy to tell the difference between a marine species of snake versus a terrestrial or a land-dwelling snake. Saan nyo siya titignan? Sa tail. Alright, yung tail nila. Yung nasa right ninyo, that's a typical marine snake kasi may paddle siya. Flat. Obviously kasi panglangoy, di ba? Parang fish. Yung inyong, or yung sagwan, di ba? Whereas yung sa left ng screen ninyo, typical, cone type shape ng tail, na ginagamit naman ng mga, na nakikita usually sa mga terrestrial snakes. So that's one easy way to tell a marine snake and land snake apart. Okay, remember that. And then most snakes only have nostrils, whereas some species of snakes, like yung i-describe ni Inigo later on, they have pits. Okay? Siguro i-describe na lang ni Inigo kung ano yung use nito mga pits na ito. Pwede rin itong gamitin sa inyong questions later sa quiz. I think may quiz raw kayo after ng presentations namin. Worth 10 points. Okay, so moving on, I think this is my last segment of slides now. I just want to show some odd behavior of snakes, some cool but odd behavior of snakes. And let me start with a video. Hopefully makita nyo ito, no? Kasi this is an interesting display of Oops. Sandali lang mukhang misconceptions ba ito? Okay, sorry, misconceptions pala muna tayo. Oops, misconception yan. But mauna tayo sa misconception. Number one, misconception number one. So ito ay 4 misconceptions. Sino ba sa misconception? But anyway, ito ay mga 4 na mga some of the common local beliefs actually na either true or for the most part hindi naman true na. So I chose 4. Ito kasi yung palagi naming naririnig sa mga local people or even sa mga kasama natin. And these are number 1, snakes are slimy. Number 2, they can crow like a rooster. May mga tumitila ako. 3, they don't forget. And 4, giant ones are found in caves. Okay. So let's start with snakes are slimy. Totoo ba to or hindi? What do you think? Nope. Snake skin or scales, actually, we call them scales. They're very dry. Okay. Wala silang ini-emit ng mucus na parang frog, gano'n, na pag lumakad sila or nag-crawl sa isang grassland, makikita nyo na basa yung grassland. Hindi yung totoo. Okay. Snakes are the snake scales are pretty dry. And they have to be dry. No? Kasi ito ay protection sa kanilang body. And kasi kung palagi siyang wet, unless you are a freshwater or a marine aquatic snake, no? Malaki yung impact nito sa kanilang physiology. Okay, so most snakes are not slimy. Even actually yung mga aquatic snakes, again, yung mga freshwater or marine, hindi naman slimy yung kanilang scales. Because una-una, hindi naman sila nagpo-produce ng wala naman silang mucus glands. Okay. So yung kanilang scale can either be big scales, yung typical for reptiles, or they can be round, juxtaposed, parang bead-like scales na very tightly knit together. Anyway, ang main reason naman for that is syempre for protection. As you can see here, kasi parang armor na rin nila yan yung kanilang mga scales. And dahil isa siya na skewed, di ba? Individual scales yun. That way, maganda na din yung pagiging na-emphasize yung pagka-protect sa kanilang body. Like itong picture na to, makikita nyo merong sa may bandang middle part ng body niya, meron siyang wound doon nakagat yata ito ng potential na predator. So also scales can be very colorful, diba? And they have this different types of coloration pattern can also indicate kung ano yung behavior nila, or kung sila ba ay for example venomous ba or not. Inigo will talk more about this sa kanyang talk in a bit. So again, snakes are slimy. No, they're not. Number 2 misconception, they can crow like a rooster. Well, it's cute, pero it's not true. Okay, among snakes, they don't crow. Kasi this is a local belief that we often hear from people in the mga kasama namin usually sa mga mountains, yung mga guides, mga manong na they claim na sila ay tumitilaok na raw. And it is not possible actually kasi they don't have the right architecture sa vocals nila, yung mga muscles and stuff to do that. Pero they do make, loud hissing sounds by, extruding air sa kanilang glottis. You know that, diba? So like this scary photo of a king cobra, diba? Na they do hiss kasi many snakes hiss like, cobras or mga sawa, mga pythons, they do hiss. They make sounds also. And some snakes also kasi that helps them to be scary enough. All right, it adds to their being scary. Kaya naman sila, the reason why they do that is to scare away potential predators, di ba? Yun naman yun. And then number 3, they don't forget. It's very common. This is actually quite sad, local belief, no? There's no scientific basis to this. Pero marami, I'm sure pag kayo ay nagta-travel, nag-road trip kayo, or even sa mga areas ninyo, kung ito ay may mga snakes na records, it's very common to see things like this. Diba? Snakes are highly persecuted because they're snakes. Katulad ng sinabi ni Prof. Amy, a lot of people also, don't like spiders, so they probably do not care much. Pareho rin sa snakes kasi kinatatakutan, akala ng mga tao lahat ng snakes ay poisonous, which hindi naman totoo. Inigo will clarify that issue later on. And it's always it's not uncommon to see decapitated dead snakes, usually yung mga tao, especially in the rural areas, pag nakita sila ng malalaking snakes, ang una na lang ginagawa, pinuputulan ng ulo or dinudurog yung ulo, which is quite, sad now. And kasi ang kanilang belief ay pag nakita ka ng snakes, yung eyes nila, again, kasi siguro that's also siguro isang reason bakit nila naisip to kasi wala kasing eyelids sa snakes, palaging kita ka gano'n. So, and they believe na para ma-erase yung memory mo, para hindi ma-communicate somehow ng mga snakes na napapatayan sa ibang snakes, para ikaw ay i-revenge, bawian, ay dinudurog nga yung head part, or pagka or pinuputol and then pinapasagasaan pa. This is very common. For example, this one is a cobra na pinasagasaan. Tinanggal na yung ulo and then pinasagasaan pa. Which is again typical for, which is sad, no? Pero quite common sa many parts of the country. And then finally, giant snakes are found in caves. So palaging ganun yan, na pag merong areas tayo sa Philippines na merong caves, sasabihin ng mga local people, ay mag-ingat kayo, merong sobrang laking ahas dyan na kaya kang kainin. Pagpasok mo sa cave, merong bibig na naghihintay sa'yo, kasya kayo doon kahit 10 kayo, mga ganun tipo. Well, that's exciting, to see a giant snake. Pero, well, for the most part, it's true. Pero not that giant, yung mga, yung nakikita natin sa mga movies. Hindi naman. Pero caves are also, snakes are found in caves, pythons and, some rat snakes and stuff, for the simple reason that caves are, safe refuge kasi itong mga tayo. Diba? And also, may mga sources naman ng food doon, like bats or rats and stuff, which many snakes are, pretty fond of. Diba? Pero yung misconception, yung notion, yung belief na, ganyan kalaki na snake, yung bibig, that's not true. Okay, ito na yung behavior. Sorry about that. Na-mix ko pala. This will only take a few minutes and then we will shift to our next speaker, si Inigo. Pero I would like to emphasize some of the odd behaviors na common sa snakes natin sa Philippines in general. This is a short video of Cyclochorus, ang genus ng snake na ito. It's a stream-dwelling aquatic snake ito pero makikita din sa land syempre. And it's exhibiting a form of escape behavior, which is very interesting kasi ito yung mga typical escape behavior na a lot of local people, especially yung mga local hunters pag nasa mga gubat na dinidescribe nila na gugulungan ka ng ahas. And this is I think this is the source for that. Take a look. Diba? So many of our snakes actually do that also. They kind of leap, they propel themselves, with a sudden jerking movement to escape possible harm. Okay, it's a defensive type or escape type of behavior, which is very interesting, diba? We know now that at least 2 to 3 species do that. Cyclochorus and some Olicodon also do that, and some Rhabdophis, mga species ng snakes na these are really forest dwelling species. And of course, the most common one na alam natin na mga behavior ay yung coloration pattern, na aposematism. Diba? And this is very interesting to study rin, na to show na in-exhibit nito, dinidisplay nito mga species na ito kung sila ay poisonous ba or hindi. And actually, if you would look closely sa picture na ito, sa photo na ito, tignan nyo yung tail. Diba? Kinukol ng snake yung kanyang tail. Actually, pinapakita niya yung underside ng tail niya, which is bright yellow, red, or scarlet na color. This serves as a warning na don't touch me, don't eat me. I am venomous, I can be harmful, I can kick your ass, something like that. Kahit maliit ako. Am I allowed to say that? Anyway. Okay, so isa pang interesting na behavior is playing dead. A lot of our species, they do that. This is again a Cyclochorus species. Pinapakita niya na pag nahuli mo siya, kung hindi siya yung escape na tatalon, yung kanina yung nakita ninyong na video, pwedeng ito play dead. Ipapakita niya yung kanyang underside, yung kanyang ventrals, and then hindi na siya gagalaw. And of course, any potential predator, especially yung mga carnivores, diba? Like cats, they probably wouldn't want to eat, dead animals, so na hindi gumagalaw. So yun yung kanilang escape mechanism na rin to, playing dead. Or they are forming a really tight coil or a ball para maprotektahan yung kanyang katawan, especially yung ulo. So there. So with that, well, I end my presentation. siguro, if you have questions, especially kung ano yung mga fields of research na very important na dapat natin gawin for snake research, just shoot your questions, and we will try to answer them later. So thank you very much, and I'll give you our hosts for the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arvin Diezmos, for educating us this afternoon. So now we're moving on to our next speaker.
So, saglit lang. Wait lang Hindi ko ayaw mag-share screen.
Yes, take your time, Sir Inigo.
Tatry ko lang mag-reconnect sa Zoom.
Okay, so while waiting, again, we'd love to thank our following sponsors for making this activity possible: Pet Lovers Animal Clinic and Emergency Services, Doc May Pet Wellness Center, and to the following visitant alumni: Circular Julius Ladia, Circular Dr. Adelfa Ann Marquez, Circular Dr. Mia Liana Abawag.
Hello, start na?
Okay, there.
So, hello, magandang hapon po. My name is Inigo Del Prado, a herpetologist, member of Herpwatch Pilipinas, and advisee of Dr. Arvin Diezmos. So, again, a big thanks to the Veterinary Circle of Ten for organizing this activity and inviting me today to talk about the feared but mostly misunderstood venomous snakes of the Philippines. Now, as Doc Arbs mentioned, the Philippines definitely owes up to its title as a mega-diverse country, home to over 150 snake species, including marine snakes, where nearly 70% are endemic or found nowhere else in the world. Now, unfortunately, sabi nga ni Sir Arvin, snakes have long been associated with danger, including envenomation and, of course, death. Their bad reputation has caused a lot of unnecessary fear, resulting in a great number of snake deaths, especially in the Philippines, where even the smallest snakes are killed on sight, decapitated, so pinupugutan, then burned or iniiwan sa kalsada para masagasaan na lang. So, despite the common belief that most, if not all, snakes are venomous, the truth is only 33 species of the over 150 found in the Philippines are actually considered dangerously venomous to humans. These snakes form 4 groups. So we have cobras, coral snakes, sea snakes, and pit vipers. These are split into 2 families, Elapidae and Vipidae. So morphologically, the 2 mainly differ in the structure of their fangs. Vipers have mastered their dominantly ambush hunting style and have evolved fangs positioned in a mobile maxillary bone that has allowed them to grow longer fangs, which they can move independently. So pwede nilang, as seen on the GIF, or fold away when closing their mouths, while elapids have a fixed maxillary bone with shorter fangs. Now, vipers are distributed worldwide and are referred to as the most medically significant group of venomous snakes. being the leading cause of snakebite-related incidents and deaths in their respective regions. Now, while venom toxicity and makeup may vary from species to species, members of the viper family are known to produce both chemotoxic and neurotoxic venom. In the Philippines, we have 5 species of vipers, all belonging to the subfamily Eutalinae, or pit vipers. This is the most species-rich viper subfamily. And in addition to their ability to move their fangs, pit vipers have evolved specialized organs called loreal pits, yung tinuturo ni Sir Arbs kanina, which act as heat sensors, giving them thermosensitive powers, making them adept nocturnal ambush predators. Now, 4 out of the 5 Philippine species are endemic. So meron tayong mga species tulad ng Trimerosaurus macgregori and Trimerosaurus schultzei na restricted to islands such as Batanes and Palawan. Now, on Luzon, only 2 pit viper species can be found. The Philippine pit viper sa left, Trimerosaurus flavomaculatus, and the Bornean keeled pit viper, Tropidolemus sabonulatus. Now, as with all pit vipers, both have distinct triangular heads, but the two can be distinguished by the presence of strongly keeled, yung may mga tusok-tusok, na scales on their heads and chin. So yung may keeling, ito yun, for the Tropidolemus species, for the genus Tropidolemus, and yung smooth scales, Trimerosaurus. Now, both are lowland forest species that favor riparian habitats. So they dwell near streams and rivers. Both species are also known to be arboreal and favor staying up trees and dense foliage, but occasionally are also found on the ground, under boulders or bushes, especially the Trimerosaurus flavomaculatus, which tends to which we sometimes encounter hunting near streams on the ground. Now, compared to vipers, elapids, yung members ng family Elapidae, are more diverse in the Philippines and is comprised of both terrestrial and marine snakes. So species of this family are considered deadly, where most produce neurotoxic venom, which directly attacks the nervous system. Now, the first group are the cobras, which unfortunately only recently has seen a surge in sightings and killings. So, mapapansin nyo siguro, marami nagpo-post ngayon sa Facebook na mga patay na king cobra. So, there are 4 cobra species in the Philippines, where 2 are unique to the archipelago. Now, of these, only 2 species occur in Luzon. The famous king cobra on the left, Ophiophagus hana, the largest venomous snake species in the world, growing upwards of 10 feet, and the endemic Philippine cobra, Naha philippinensis. Now, the name Ophiophagus literally translates to snake eater, as these snakes primarily prey on other snakes. Now, as with all cobras, both have distinct hoods that flare out when threatened, and both are terrestrial forest species, but are frequently encountered in forest edge habitats and in agricultural plantations. Now, another group of elapids are the coral snakes. There are 6 species of these brightly colored snakes found in the Philippines, all of which are endemic. Of these, only 1 representative occurs on Luzon Island, the Philippine barred coral snake, Hemibungarus caligaster. Members of the species have black and white dorsal rings and bright red sides and belly. So, sabi nga kanina Sir Arvin, these are very bright snakes. And some associate this with venomous. Yan. Unfortunately, maraming colorful snakes sa Philippines. Now, these are smaller snakes reaching only about half a meter in total length. And although much is still unknown about their ecology, as with most snakes, coral snakes are known to be almost exclusively Ophiophagous, preying on smaller snakes such as blind snakes and other smaller snakes. Now, like the cobras, the Philippine coral snake is a terrestrial forest species, which prefers areas with dense vegetation. Uh, although encounters in human settlements in rural areas is also not rare. Now, lastly, the only fully aquatic group, the sea snakes. There are 19 species of these marine snakes, known to frequent the coastal waters of the Philippines. Although there are around 8 more species that are expected to occur here, but haven't been recorded. Now, interestingly, one species has evolved to survive in a lake, the Taal sea snake, the Lake Taal sea snake, Hydrophis imperi. This unique species is endemic to Taal Lake, and like most other sea snakes, feed exclusively on fish. Now, sabi nga Sir Arvin, the key characteristic distinguishing sea snakes from terrestrial snakes are their laterally compressed tails used to effectively paddle underwater. Now, almost all sea snakes rarely, if ever, come to land except when swept ashore by strong waves. Yeah. So, may nakita ko kayo ng question asking kung may key characters ba para sabihin venomous or non-venomous sa snake. Well, sad to say, unfortunately, there is no easy way of distinguishing venomous snakes from non-venomous ones. Remembering key characteristics such as triangular heads for pit vipers, hoods for cobras, bright coloration for coral snakes, and paddle-like tails for sea snakes could help. But as most of these distinguishing traits are not always easily seen or sometimes even found in other snake species, we still emphasize that extreme care should be exercised when handling any snake, big or small, even those supposedly non-venomous. Now, to give you examples of some snakes commonly misidentified as dangerously venomous, we have here on the left the smooth-scaled mountain rat snake, Paias luzonensis, which are frequently mistaken as cobras, obviously due to their coloration and large size, sabi nga Sir Arvin. And another is the vine snake, Ahetula prasina, on the right. This is a long, thin snake with a triangular head, which are frequently encountered in lowland forests. So, to share a story, during a trip in Bicol, one of our guides actually called the species alas 12 or 12 o'clock, as according to their beliefs, if this snake bites you, patay ka na before midnight. Unfortunately, well, this hasn't been proven. So, who are at most risk of encountering these snakes? Well, first off are locals living near forest ecosystems. We often see posts of dead cobras that were found and killed near homes in rural areas. In fact, from one of our recent visits to Aurora, the local hunters from the group of Agtas have shared stories of their encounters with these snakes, especially the Philippine pit viper, where they usually encounter them when hunting at night for shrimp and eels. Yeah, so unfortunately, pit vipers also hunt at night, and they prefer staying on boulders or shrubs along the streams. Also at high risk are farmers in mountainous regions who share of stories that pit vipers often end up on vining vegetables, and those working in the rice fields that often encounter cobras. So also prone to danger are tourists and mountaineers who like to visit forested areas with little to no knowledge on wildlife. So shown on the left is a photo posted by a local mountaineering group where they found a Bornean keeled pit viper. The snake appears to be disturbed, where the photographer even took a close-up photo of the snake. So this is a very risky move, and please don't prove your bravery with venomous snakes. So additionally, tourist spots such as waterfalls and streams are ideal habitats for pit vipers. Now, last are exotic pet keepers. With an increase in demand for exotic pets, the probability of urban snakebite incidents also increases. As with most pet owners, we grow attached to our animals, and some even go as far as to say that their pets are tame. Unfortunately, the risk of getting bitten still far outweighs the rewards. Now, although local snake bite incidents are still only poorly recorded, a bite from an elapid may prove deadly. The effects of cobra neurotoxin can cause respiratory failure, which eventually leads to death. For pit viper bites, while seldom heard of, necrosis and swelling are usually the main effects, where death appears to be rare. According to locals, a bite from a pit viper causes intense pain, swelling of the entire limb where they were bitten, and necrosis of the bite site. So, kita naman sa left, sa picture, nabulok na yung finger niya. So, here we highlight that a bite from any snake should be treated as an important medical incident, where we would highly suggest to go straight to hospital. So, considering all this, a large gap in our knowledge about Philippine venomous snakes still remain. So much is still not known about the systematics and ecology of these snakes. As we learn more about the evolutionary history of Philippine reptiles and the geographic history of the Philippines, combined with the onset of molecular techniques, we discovered that more and more species, thought to be widespread, are actually island endemics. Additionally, studies on toxicology are still lacking. We still have a ways to go in describing all the peptides and proteins in snake venom and discovering possible life-saving drugs. For the Philippines, research on antivenom is still lacking. Now, sharing our home with 33 species of venomous snakes, we only have antivenom for one species, the Philippine cobra, which is produced by the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM. So this poses problems as venom toxicity may vary from species to species. And lastly, medical records of snakebite incidents are low, possibly due to several factors, including the difficulty in transportation to hospitals, obviously financial constraints, and the availability of local healers who offer cheaper traditional medicine. So now, while we emphasize that great care should be exercised around these snakes, like every other species, venomous snakes play an important role in their natural ecosystems. Snakes are predators that help control populations of a variety of prey species, from insects, frogs, small mammals, birds, lizards, and even other snakes. Snakes also fall as prey to other predators. So if any of you have watched the amazing documentary, Bird of Prey, you would have seen an awesome shot of the Philippine eagle chowing down on a pit viper. Now, aside from their role in the balance of the ecosystem, extracts from venomous snakes have been found to contain therapeutic properties. Although much is still unknown about the characteristics of snake venom, researchers have started highlighting the possible medical significance of snake venom linked to contain anticoagulating or analgesic properties. Now, as we share the mega diverse country with an abundance of wildlife, I hope one day we end up seeing snakes as our grumpy neighbors who just want to be left alone. And with that, I would like to end my presentation by saying, please don't kill snakes. Snakes are harmless unless threatened. So thank you all for listening.
So there. Thank you, Dr. Arvin Diezmos and Mr. Inigo Del Prado. Thank you for educating us this afternoon. There. So again, thank you, Dr. Arvin Diezmos and Mr. Inigo Del Prado. Thank you, sir, for educating us this afternoon. Thanks. Speaking from a perspective of a veterinary medicine student, we agree with you. It's true that snakes are usually associated with danger, and a lot of people have this wrong notions about snakes. I think compelling folklore, stories, myths, and legends have us convinced. So thank you so much for sharing such relevant knowledge with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Yes po. So, Dr. Diaz was mentioned something about local beliefs po, tama po ba? I live in the province of Nueva Ecija po kasi tapos uso dito yung sinasabi ng mga locals na tumitilak daw po yung snake. So I just want to emphasize on that. Diba? Sino pong mga taga Nueva Ecija dito? Hi! Ayan. So tumitilak daw po yung snakes or they make sounds comparable sa pagka-crumple po ng paper. Ayun. Tapos yung like pag nakakahuli po sila ng snake, pinapatay nila. I've witnessed it na po kasi, yung dinudurog nila yung mata. Ang paniniwala po kasi ng mga locals dito, yung shadow daw po, sorry, yung reflection rather, ng tao na last yung nakita, tinatandaan daw po niya or something.
Oo nga eh. Yun nga, thank you ha, Nicole. Thank you. Actually, yun nga yung, if you could, recall yung part ng ating presentation. Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
okay.
You can hear.
Yun nga eh, kasi narinig na naman namin yan, yung mga story na yan, yung tumitilaok, in fact, may mga lugar tayo sa Luzon, if I remember right, I think sa Sierra Madre, yan, sa bandang Isabela, na may mga ahas raw na may palong pa, na merong, ano yung palong? Comb, di ba? Which of course, hindi naman totoo, no? Well, again, they do make sounds, pero they, kasi equipped naman sila, ng glottis, and then you can blow air doon, pero wala naman sila mga katulad natin, mga voice box, and stuff like that. To really, to really produce, yung vibration na malalakas, no? Pero aside said nga, they do make sound para to add sa kanilang sa kanilang defense, 'di ba? Maghihis sila, by blowing air. And actually malakas rin naman 'yon. Pero ginagamit naman nila yung pag-hiss na ito, pag-make ng sounds, but not tilaok. Again, to help in their as a defensive behavior naman yan eh. And then yung number 2, yun nga yung, which is quite sad na yung paniniwala na natatandaan ng snakes, yung huli niyang nakita, ay prevalent pa rin sa ating culture. In such a way na talagang lahat ng nakita mo na snake, pinapatay nga, no? Dinudurog yung head, which is, I mean, kawawa naman talaga yung snake kasi, well, they're dead, no? And as far as I know, and I'm sure you guys are scientists as well, wala namang proof ito eh, na wala siyang scientific proof. And I don't think may mga studies na existing to show that, pwedeng siguro gamitin, pwedeng i-try ng mga ethologists natin, di ba? Ng mga behavioral experts, animal behavior, kung totoo yan. Pero as far as I know, wala naman talagang proof na ganyan, na natatandaan ng mga snake, yung huli niyang nakita na tao na mukha, and then ipapasa yon for some reason, maipapasa sa ibang snakes para yung mga ibang snakes na yon ay magre-revenge para sa iyo, diba? So ganun eh. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Sarah. There. Good afternoon po. I'm a practicing physician in a rural area. Sometimes patients come in the clinic for snake bites but cannot recall or describe the appearance of the snake that has bitten them. Can I distinguish if the snake was venomous or not by just basing on the pattern of the bite? Since hassle po i-refer lahat ng patients sa toxicologist, especially sa rural area po ako.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a very good question. Inigo, what can you say? bite marks.
Bite marks?
Can you tell, by bite marks lang if it is venomous or not?
Hindi masabi if venomous or non-venomous yung kumagat sa tao. Based on the bite marks alone. So I think the best thing is yun pa rin, yung based sa pattern or sa itsura ng snake itself. Kasi gets nga po na mahirap talaga.
Yeah, siguro if I may add, actually yung mga experts talaga on on this area, yung mga taga Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, RITM, ng Department of Health. Although ang masasabi rin kasi namin, very few pa rin kasi yung reference materials natin. Although ang RITM ay nag-produce na ng several na siguro kulang lang sa pag-disseminate. Yun na lang eh. So especially yung doctor for the barrio na nagsabi na if you could get hold of those publications from DOH, from RITM, malaki yung malaki yung magiging tulong nun sa inyo. So please ask help na lang from RITM of the DOH, which is in Muntinlupa City in Alabang.
Okay po, thank you, Dr. Arden. Here's another one po. Are there species of snake that can coexist with other animals?
Coexist with other animals, huh? In what way? Symbiosis, mga ganon, or mutualism, or anyway, siguro to give you an answer na lang, using yung basic ecological tenets na ang mga snakes kasi in general, they are top predators. Diba? Usually most species are found sa top ng food chain. That's why they're very dependent sa kung ano yung health ng mga nasa other components ng food chain na yon. Especially yung mga what they regard as prey items nila. Okay? In such a way na kung itong mga top predators na ito, like the Philippine eagle, it's a top predator. Kung merong nangyari sa kanyang usual na prey items, either mag-collapse yung population, for example, ng mga prey items na ito, or magkaroon sila ng diseases, which is, ito yung emerging infectious diseases, ito talaga yung hot topic ngayon, di ba? Especially sa wildlife. That's why you vet people, mga vet doctors, you have a big role to play now sa itong documenting itong emerging infectious diseases sa wildlife. So kung ano yung impact nun sa kanilang prey base, malaki yung effect nila sa population nila. Kasi di ba ang mga top predators, they are naturally rare, meaning hindi ganun kadami yung population nila. And kung ano yung mangyayari sa ilalim ng food chain, definitely magre-reflect sa taas. So yun. So siguro that's the way to answer tong relationship nito with other species. So,
Sir Orbs, sorry, add ko lang doon sa kanina, yung previous question. I think meron pong may paper na pwedeng i-download sa site ng RITM. Bite Management Protocol ata yung tawag nila. So nagbibigay sila ng magandang information on how to deal with snake bites, how they treat snake bites, kung ano na kina-classify,
yeah.
And treating antivenom pala.
Merong manual yung RITM, and you should try to avail of that, a copy. I think it's free, no? Free naman siya, PDF. So.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Samuel Alberto. Good afternoon, sir. Is the absence of L'Oreal scales can be a basis for identification of venomous and non-venomous snakes?
I think possible siya kasi ang alam ko, elapids and spiders don't have loyal pits. Pero mahirap din gawing basis to for identification kasi again, we have sa dami ng species of snakes, we have non-venomous snakes that also have that also don't have loyal pits.
Like L'Oreal scales.
Loyal scales. With viper pits.
Okay,
So
I think
yung
this next one po is very general na question. Pero it goes po na, venomous po ba or non-venomous naman yung mga kadalasang ahas na natatagpuan na naninirahan sa bahay? Kasi madalas nagpapanik yung may-ari, which is valid naman, kaso pinapatay nila agad yung snake.
oo nga.
I guess it would depend sa area. If you live near forests, may possibility pa rin na venomous yung snake na makita mo. Pero if you live in an urban setting, I doubt na venomous yun. Most likely, it's the common wolf snake, Lycodon cappuccinos, which is also considered invasive. So ito yung black and white snake na madalas makita sa cities, sa mga bahay, sa bubong.
Okay, thank you.
Anne, can I add something dun sa, kasi I think it's also a very common and important question.
Yes,
po, Doc Arvin.
Normally kasi yung, pag meron ka nakita na snake sa bahay mo, syempre, lalo na sa mga lugar na hindi common na makakita ng snakes, di ba? Magugulat ka talaga eh. And syempre matatakot ka na. Siguro ang and we will ang advice namin dito eh una-una wag kayo mag-panic. Okay? Usually naman ang mga for example, ang pinaka like Inigo has mentioned, ang isang venomous species lang naman talagang you need to watch out for, lalo na kung kayo ay nakatira sa area na may mga natural habitat pa, mga may konting gubatan, merong mga grassy area, yung ganon. May cobra, and cobras are very easy to determine, di ba? Una-una, aggressive yan. Pag nakita mo, magpa-posture ka agad yan, maglalabas ng hood. Whereas yung the rest of the snakes naman, hindi naman nila ginagawa yan. In fact, mas takot pa nga sila. They are more afraid to us humans than vice versa. Dapat ganon. Just let them be. Pero kung sila ay pumasok sa bahay ninyo, well, definitely ibang na yan. Sa loob ng bahay, ibang issue na yon. Siguro, either, number one, humingi kayo ng tulong, tumawag kayo sa kung meron kayong help na mapupuntahan. Ang usually wala kasi tayo dito sa Philippines na grupo na talagang they take care of this. Compare sa ibang bansa, especially sa Australia or sa US or sa Europe na sila yung kukuha ng mga snakes, i-rescue nila and then nadalhin sa zoo or sa papakawalan sa sa mga areas. Wala kasi tayong ganun pa eh. Wala pa. Pero I'm sure magkakaroon na rin yan eventually. Kasi sa ibang parts ng Southeast Asia, meron na rin. Ang importante lang dyan ay knowledge. Okay? Kailangan alam natin na kung ano yung gagawin natin. Number one, don't panic. Number two, kung kaya ninyo, take a picture, di ba? Kung number three, kung kaya nyo isubdue yung snake, which we do not encourage you. Pero kung maliliit lang naman yun, pwede ka namang gumamit lang ng long na broom, di ba? Na walis para mapaalis siya sa loob ng bahay mo kung nasa loob. Pero kung nasa labas naman yan, nasa bakuran mo lang, just let it be. Kasi aalis rin yan eh. Okay? And then, ang isa pang sinasabi namin palagi, ang favorite kasi ng mga snakes na pagkain usually ay rats, mga rodents. Okay? So if you keep your household, yung bahay niyo, bakuran, na malinis, walang masyadong, di ba, walang madumi, so hindi siya pupuntahan ng mga rats, so wala rin pupunta doon ng mga ahas. Di ba? So kasi case in point, like ngayon, tag-ulan, maraming lumalabas na mga python, mga sawa. In fact, dito sa aming village may mga sawa dito na nakikita kami paggabi. Marami kasing source ng food ngayon, yung mga rats. Okay? And favorite kasi nila yan. So, sa ganun lang naman, if you see them, pabayaan nyo lang kasi hindi naman kayo i-attack talaga nila. Take pictures and of course send photos sa mga people who would probably be knowledgeable about kung anong species yan, whether venomous ba or not. So yan.
Thank you,
Sorry,
sir. Our next question is, as herpetologist, may I ask your take on snake keeping? I believe it is now a popular hobby.
Inigo, you answer that. Snake keeping.
So, tulad ng sabi ni Ma'am, well, we can't avoid yung pag-alaga na snakes. So, hindi natin pwede pigilan yung hobbyists na mag-alaga na snakes. So, what we ask is that we be responsible owners na hindi pa kawala, hindi na kayang i-handle. Make sure na they can support the life of the snake. So, buong life niya na kahit lumaki siya, humaba siya, tumaba siya. Ayun. Actually, in other countries, they have laws na sinasabi na you can only keep snakes if you have double locked doors. So for, I guess sa akin, personally, I think okay lang naman siya kasi hindi na pipigilan. And sana lang maging responsible tayo. Ano na medyo common sa trade sa Burmese pythons, which are non-native, unlike the regulated pythons. So, itong mga Burmese pythons, may possibility, tama di ba? May possibility.
Yep.
Okay po, thank you for that, Mr. Inigo. We still have a lot of questions coming in po, pero we're running short of time na. So for the concluding question, Mr. Jiro from UPLB wishes to say hi po to Dr. Arvid. Ayan. And he wishes to ask din po what the current state of herpetology in the Philippines is, or how it is, and how can we encourage young scientists to study the country's biodiversity and field of biology in particular.
Hello, Jiro. Kumusta? Balita ko may girlfriend ka raw. Anyway. Siguro, Nicole, I'll answer this question, pero can I add a bit dun sa sinabi kanina ni Inigo? Yung about keeping snakes.
Yes po, Dr. Arvid.
Sige. Sige, sagutin ko muna yung sinabi ni Jiro. Studying snakes or amphibians or reptiles or biodiversity in general, actually, lalo na ngayon, hindi naman kailangan na kayo ay really smart, totally intelligent, or, super parang rocket scientist kayo. Hindi naman eh. You just need to have the heart for it, the passion, yung interest, di ba? Yung interest to learn more about these groups of animals or plants or insects, kung ano man yan. Yung diseases or whatever. Yun lang naman kailangan yung gawin. And then, yung knowledge naman, magbi-build up rin yan eh. Maganda ngayon, well, nowadays, marami na kasing references available. Okay, yun yung maganda ngayon. And also, you can readily, get in touch or touch base with people na nakapag-publish or did a lot of work on that area, for example. Mag-communicate lang kayo. Sana sumagot, no? Pero sasagot rin naman yan kahit paano, no? So, I guess hindi naman kailangan na kayo ay maging really even maging expert or highly specialized na herpetologist, for example. In fact, kahit hindi kayo biologist, iba yung inyong field, you can still contribute a lot, sa herpetology or even sa other disciplines. Na ang importante lang, again, you have the heart, you have the proper guidance, collaborate dun sa mga taong knowledgeable ahead of you kasi sila yung may mas experience. And then, number 3, well, really try to collaborate with other people, build up a good collaboration kasi yun yung magandang, yun yung isa sa mga basic ingredients para ka maging successful sa isang field. So yun. And then siguro to add lang dun sa sinabi ni Nigo, again, yung keeping snakes, or other exotic, kasi uso ngayon yan, di ba, yung mga exotic animals. Again, hindi naman natin mapipigilan yung mga tao, di ba? I mean, it's their freedom. Pero syempre, we need some good regulation, di ba? Kailangan naman i-regulate talaga tayo para hindi maging lumala yung illegal trade or masira yung population ng mga natural populations ng important species ng plants or animals, di ba? Kasi yun naman yung problema sa pag increase ng interest. Nagkakaroon ng increase ng ng illegal, di ba? Which hindi naman dapat. Okay? Hindi naman dapat. So, if you want to keep snakes, go ahead. If you are going to be responsible, di ba? Parang lang yan, keeping dogs or cats, kailangan responsible ka pa rin. Kailangan ilalakad mo rin yung snake mo, di ba? Papakainin mo rin, so ganyan. Pero syempre hindi mo naman nilalakad yung snake mo. So be responsible and yun nga, follow the rules, kung ano yung sinet ng government, either locally or international law ito. So yun, and yan, so and honestly for me lang, just get a dog or a cat. Cute naman ng mga dogs and cats. So,
they're nice companions.
Yeah.
Once again, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to Dr. Diezmos and Sir Inigo Del Prado for being with us this afternoon, and to our audience and viewers here on Zoom and on Facebook for the unanswered questions. Don't worry, we will not ignore them. We'll get them answered after this episode.
Okay.
May we again call on Circular Daisy Acuna, Uncovered Activity Head, to award the certificates and also as a mark of appreciation to our last 2 resource speakers for today's webinar episode, Dr. Arvin Diezmos and Mr. Inigo Luis Del Prado.
Okay, thank you. Here's the citations. Veterinary Circle for 10, Central Luzon State University. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Mr. Inigo Luis T. Del Prado and Dr. Arvin C. Diezmos for being our resource speakers in the undervalued wildlife necessitates conservation through volunteerism in education for the restoration of ecological balance and diversity, or Uncovered, webinar episode 2 on Herps and Spiders. In their presentation entitled Snakes in the Philippines, held online via Zoom and social media websites on October 3, 2020. Signed, Aaron Nicole DC Dacumos, Executive President of Veterinary Circle for 10. Daisy C. Acuna, Coordinator of ACAP Wildlife Program. Vincent Reginald G. Thomas, Master Trooper of NUT NEB. Dr. Froilan Bernard R. Matias, and Dr. Jonathan V. Lazaro, Advisors of.
Before we do a wrap-up, may I invite our participants here on Zoom to turn on their cameras, please, for a group photo. Circular Anna will do the countdown to the picture taking.
Okay, so in 3, 2, 1, smile. Once again, in 3, 2, 1, smile. Again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you all again on our next episode. So please do visit the official Facebook page of Veterinary Circle for 10 and give us a thumbs up and tune in for further announcements.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Dr. Arvin Diasmos and
Mm,
Sir Inigo Del Prado, as well as to
Thanks.
Dr. Amy Lynn Dupo. Thank you so much po on behalf of the organization and sa partners po namin.
Yes, we appreciate the invitation. Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Anne. And thank you, Daisy. And we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you so much
very
po.
much.
Thank you.
Stay safe and enjoy
Thank
the
you so
rest of
much,
the day.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Daisy. Bye-bye.
Hello, Kuya.